Okay, this is another question, calculus question. I'm trying to pull it up right now. And this one, you're asking about the chain rule. And I'll explain the chain rule. I'm just trying to get a problem. X over x to the fifth plus 1. X over x to the fifth plus 1. So, f of x is equal to x to the x over, x to the fifth plus 1. And that's going to come out, you could do it again 3 ways. You could bring this x to the fifth plus 1 up, and that would be f of x is equal to x times x to the fifth plus 1 raised to the negative 1 power. And then you could do the product rule here, quotient rule here, or that's probably all I would do. I would not try to do the algebraic because it's going to be hard to do because of that negative 1. So I personally probably would go with this one because I think that would be easier, but we'll do it both ways. Now, to go over the chain rule right quick, I'll go over here. The chain rule is kind of in common with the product rule. The power rule. It uses a little bit of the power rule to actually work. If I have A times x minus n, or x minus some number, x minus h to the n power. Okay, this is an example. Then the first thing I do is I bring n out. That'd be n times a times x minus h to the n minus 1. See, that's all power rule. That's all power rule. And then the chain rule says that if I do the chain rule, I've got to multiply by what's inside. What's inside what? What's inside the parentheses? And I got to take that derivative and I have to multiply it by that. So then that would be multiplied by x minus h prime. So really, the chain rule is nothing but the power rule with one step further, because this is the power rule. And this, you add that one step to it, plus this step right here, plus x minus h prime, and then you've got the chain rule. So, two things to look for. When you've got a big set of parentheses, and you've got like x plus h on the inside of it, and you've got an exponent out here, chances are you're going to be using the chain rule. So that's your flags. The two big parentheses with something besides a number in between it, like x plus 4, x squared minus 2, anything in there, and a number out here. And that's what we've got right here, and we've got down here, we've got parentheses to the first power. So you're going to be using the chain rule on these two problems. So, denominator, f prime of x is equal to denominator times numerator prime, which is 1, minus numerator times denominator prime, put a little thing right there, over denominator squared. That'd make 1 times 2 is 2. So now we got to do is clean it up. F prime of x is equal to 1 times this is that, x to the fifth plus 1, That minus, be careful with that minus right there because it's going to mess you up. X times, now we got to take the chain rule, so that 1 comes out front. So put a 1 right here. 1 times what's in the quantity you're given. 1 minus 1 is 0 times the derivative of what's inside. Well, the derivative of what's inside of this is 5x to the 4th over x to the 5th plus 1 quantity squared. F prime of x is equal to x to the 5th plus 1. I've still got a lot to clean up. This x to the 5th plus 1 raised to the 0 power goes to 1. So you're left with x times 5x to the 4th, which is 5x to the 5th, over x to the 5th plus 1 quantity squared, and f prime of x, 1x to the 5th plus 1 minus 5x to the 5th over x to the 5th plus 1 quantity squared is going to give us, and 1x to the 5th minus 5x to the 5th is negative 4x to the 5th plus 1 over x to the 5th plus 1 raised to the 2nd power. And that should be your answer. Now you could do that with the product rule and you should get the same exact answer. Let's try doing it by the product rule. And that would be first times the derivative of the second, negative 1, x to the 5th plus 1 to the negative, that'd be negative 2 times the derivative of what's inside, 5x to the 4th. Plus the second, x to the 5th plus 1 raised to negative 1 times the derivative of the first is 1. And that's going to leave us a mess. We got to clean it up. 1 times this, so we know that the second part is going to be x to the 5th plus 1 to the negative 1 power times 1. So that's done. And let's see, this 5x to the 4th can go with this x. It'd be 5x to the 5th. And then that negative 1 times this can be negative 5x to the 5th. And that leaves us with x to the 5th plus 1 raised to the negative 2nd power. We actually could bring this down here, and we could bring this down, and that's going to be negative 5x to the 5th over x to the 5th plus 1 to the 2nd power plus 1 over x to the 5th plus 1 to the 1st power. Of course, we've got to get a common denominator of 2, so that would put an x to the 5th plus 1 up here. And negative 5x to the 5th plus 1x to the 5th is negative 4x to the 5th plus 1 over x to the 5th plus 1 squared. So again, you see, if you do everything right, you should get the same answer. Now, in the class, I think I might have done something different. Let's see, I think I brought the x downstairs, which would cause a cluster, because I don't know why I would do that unless I was just showing y'all different ways. I think I brought it down, so that would be f of x is equal to 1 over x to the negative 1 times x to the 5th plus 1, and of course that's to the first power. I don't know why I would do that, because that's just a cluster, unless I was just showing you different ways. But you could do it. It would be a mess. So let's try to do it. F prime of x is equal to denominator. You could distribute that if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's do that. So that's going to be 1 over 5 minus 1 is 4. So that's going to be x to the 4th plus x to the negative 1. Is that correct? Well, that's going to be x to the 0 minus, yeah, plus x to the negative 1. So we could just forget this and let's go with f prime of x is equal to denominator x to the 4th plus x to the negative 1 times numerator prime, which that'd be 1, it's going to be 0 to take that out, minus the numerator times the denominator prime. The denominator prime is going to be 4x to the 3rd minus x to the negative 2. Does that look right? Negative 1 minus 2. Yeah. Over denominator squared, which is going to be x to the 4th plus 1, x to the negative 1 raised to the 2nd power. And f prime of x is going to be equal to negative brackets. That's going to be 4x cubed minus x to the negative 2 over x to the 4th plus x to the negative 1 raised to the 2nd power. Ooh, this is going to be a mess. I think I'm showing you which way not to do it. And that's going to be negative 4x cubed plus x to the negative 2 over x to the 4th plus x to the negative 1 raised to the 2nd power. You could bring this down. It's not going to help you very much. Basically, you're going to get a mess. You'd have to work this out. That's going to be x to the 8th plus 2 x to the negative 1 x to the 4th plus x to the negative 2. That looks like that's going to be that. And then you got negative, this is going to be a mess, 4x cubed plus x to the negative 2 over x to the 8th plus 2x to the negative 1 x to the 4th plus x to the negative 2. And I'm trying to see how this could be. I don't see. It's not going to be pretty no matter what. We do have the negative 4 and the x to the 3rd. If you brought this x up here, up, yeah, you probably could do that and bring this one down. But you got a lot. Whew. I think I've shown you which way not to go. But the only consolation we do have is that if this was to come down, we'd have to multiply this out. And if you multiply this out, this right here, you would get x to the 10th plus x to the 5th, 2x to the 5th plus 1. and they've got an x to the 8th right here. If you multiplied through this x to the 2nd, that's going to be x to the 10th plus 2. And if you took this x to the, well, 2, this is x to the negative 3 plus, or 3 plus 2 is 5. Yeah, it's going to come out to be right. Because when you move this down, I'm just thinking out loud, this coming down will be x to the 2nd multiplied by that, and that'd be x to the 10th plus negative 1 plus 4 is 3 plus 2 is x to the 5th. And that's a 2 out front. And then 2 plus 2, minus 2 plus 2 is x to the 0. So you're going to be at least getting that. And this right here I see is coming to that x to the 4. So you can see there's 2 short ways to do it and 2 non-short ways to do it. And this way I would not do it. That might mess you up if you tried to bring it down. I don't know why I said do that in the class unless I was just showing different ways of writing it. Who knows? I could have been thinking about 2 or 3 steps down the road. I don't know. But anyway, I would suggest do it the first 2 ways that I said do it.